went off to college. And I went off to the Air Force Academy here in Colorado Springs. That was my initial entry into Colorado, and I learned about wine in officer etiquette classes. And
Come on.
First time I saw a bottle of wine on the table was the Air Force teaching me how to be a gentleman.
This is a story I didn't know, and nobody would ever believe that you get your passion from the Air Force about
People
wine.
ask me all the time, like, what's this connection between the military and wine? How do those two things go together? I said, they're integral. I learned about wine initially from the Air Force. So that's why I learned about wine. My first duty assignment after graduating, after pilot training, was in California, Central Coast region of California at Vandenberg Air Force Base. And again, that's where I immersed myself in wine, near Santa Barbara, San Ynez, Paso Robles, that area. I'm flying helicopters during the day, flying over the vineyards, learning about terrain, geography, climate, weather, all that good stuff. And on the weekends, I go to the vineyards and visit them, and they talk about the same things. I'm like, wow, there's a connection between what I'm doing during the day and me as a pilot and what these winery owners, vineyard managers are doing with their property as well. So that was my hook.
And what about your brother?
My brother, he goes to school in Chicago, and to pay his way through college, he starts working in liquor stores. At 19, he starts off as a stock boy at a liquor store. And he works his way up through college to eventually, by the time he's graduating, he's a wine buyer for a couple wine shops in the Chicago suburbs. And he just gravitated towards wine. So during this period of time where I'm off in the Air Force doing my thing, my brother's in this liberal arts college in Chicago doing his thing, we are polar opposites. Social, politics, religion, everything, we're not the same. And I'm going off to combat, he's protesting war. It's a fun dynamic, but our relationship is really strained.
Older or younger?
He's 2 years younger.
Okay.
And we come home for the holidays one year just expecting our normal, 5-minute conversation, go to our corners, that's kind of the end of it thing. And we sat down and I said, Mark, what are you up to? And he said, James, what are you up to? And I started telling him about where I live in California and my hobbies and what I'm doing and about how I'm kind of discovering wine. And he said, I'm discovering wine too. I'm a wine buyer. This is my profession. And he tells me why he fell in love with wine. I tell him why I fell in love with wine and the products we liked and the stories we liked. And all of a sudden, an hour later, we're like, wait a minute, we just had a conversation about wine. And
wine does bring people together.
And so that was always the thing from the very beginning, is wine bringing people together, family, friends, colleagues. It brings people together, it brought us together, and that was kind of the spark. Now, it takes 10, 15 years after that till the spark becomes a company, but that was the spark.
Okay. And how did it become a company? I mean, because this company is not a normal company either.
No. So I leave California. My brother moves to California. He says, I want to make wine my career. Packs up everything, moves to California, no friends, no family, one job interview, says, I'm going to go make a career out of this. So he goes and he interviews at Francis Ford Coppola's winery, Neobaum Coppola in Napa. That's where he wanted to work.
Not a bad place.
Yeah, not a bad place at all. And he wanted to work there because my brother's ultimate goal was he wanted to be a novelist. He wanted to be a storyteller. He was an English major, and Coppola was a storyteller through movies.
Sure.
And then he subsequently became a storyteller through his wine.
Yes.
And so my brother got that job, fortunately, because if he didn't, I don't know where this story would have gone, but he got that job. And so his entry into high-end wine and Napa, Sonoma culture was through Coppola, and how to tell stories through your product. And that's as important to us as the product itself, which absolutely has to be fantastic, but it's the story behind the product that is so important.
So when did you start? And explain to people your business, because...
Yeah, so he works in Napa for several years, works in Sonoma, anything from winemaking to hospitality sales, kind of, cradle to grave operations, just learning the business. And he's over in Healdsburg in the Sonoma side, working there as a tasting manager. And he comes up to his 30th birthday, and he's got this little, kind of early midlife crisis in his 30s. And he says, I'm single, not in a relationship, don't have any kids. I like my job, but it's just not really going anywhere. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And I said, I'm in the Air Force. I do enjoy my job. I love being in the Air Force, being a pilot, but I'm entrepreneurial by nature. I get this bug. I want to do something too. I just don't know what it is. And I said, well, why don't we start our own wine label? Why don't we start making wine? And he said, I don't know how to start a company. I know how to work for a company. I know how to start a company, and you're in the Air Force, so how are we going to do this? And I said, well, there's got to be a way. There are people that bootstrap their way up, that start off companies in this setting. So let's figure it out. And so it's kind of there, out for his birthday, sitting in a hot tub, drinking Cabernet, smoking cigars, where we said, hey, let's do this. Let's start a company.
What year is this?
This is in 2008.
Okay.
So he goes, okay, I got a couple guys that can help me with this. So he goes back to Healdsburg, and we have two gentlemen, Gene and Carl. Carl owned a Cabernet vineyard. He was an IBM exec and Hewlett Packard exec. He owned a vineyard in Healdsburg, and Gene was his best friend. He was a building superintendent, construction superintendent, but he was also a winemaker. And these two gentlemen had befriended my brother, and my brother goes to them and says, "Hey, Gene, you're a winemaker. Carl, you own a vineyard. My brother and I want to start a winery. Like anything you can do to help me here." And they looked at each other and said, hey, Gene, hey, Carl, you want to help the kid out? And they said, "Yeah, let's help the kid out. We believe in him." So they went to lunch, kind of talked through this process, and literally wrote out on a napkin at a restaurant how much a ton of grapes cost, how much a barrel cost, production process, get to the end here, how many bottles of wine that's going to make. My brother took a picture of that napkin on his little flip phone back then, 2008, texted me a picture and says, "Okay, Gene and Carl said this is our business plan. That's how we do it." And I looked at it and I took it to my wife and said, "Hey, my brother and I want to start a company." As any good wife would say, "What the hell are you talking about? What are you thinking?" And I put out in front of her and I said, this is what it's going to take. We're going to buy 2 tons of grapes, 1 ton of Zinfandel, which is what we've got in front of us today, 1 ton of Cabernet, and we're going to make some wine. She says, "Okay, how much wine does that make?" And I showed her the math and I said, "This is how many bottles it's going to make." And she said, "So that many dollars makes that many bottles." I said, "Yeah." She said, "That's less than we spent on our last trip to Napa for vacation." And I said, "You're right." And she goes, and if we spend that, we get that many bottles. So even if nobody buys it, we get that much wine.
We got wine
right?
for life.
And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Okay, well, worst case, we'll just drink it." And I said, "Okay." So she gave me the thumbs up. We bought the grapes, made the wine. And
now, where'd you make the wine?
Yeah. So we didn't have a property. We've got no building. We have no facilities, no equipment or anything. So Gene was a consulting winemaker at another winery in the Healdsburg area in Windsor, California. And so we said, "You know what? I think we could make a few barrels of wine in here, in the corner over here, and they won't even know we're doing it. I'm making this much wine for them. We can probably make a few more barrels and just kind of operate here for a year and see how it goes." And so that's what we did. We made a couple of barrels of wine, kind of in the corner of their winery as he's consulting and making the other products. We did 1 ton of, like I said, Zinfandel, 1 ton of Cabernet. And those were our very first 2 wines. Those were released in 2009. They were 2009 vintage, and that's where we started with 2 wines, about 50 cases of each, and we sold it to family and friends. And
okay, I was like, how did you sell it? You couldn't get into liquor stores?
No, you can't distribute that much wine. So family and friends just kind of say, "Hey, does anybody like this stuff? Does anybody believe in us?" We sold out that wine pretty quick, and then just bought more and kept going.
So how do you end up in Denver?
How did I end up in Denver? So, like I mentioned, when my brother moved to California, I moved out of California with the Air Force. And I spent over 20 years in the Air Force as a pilot, and so I got moved all over the country. So while we've had this company now for 15 years, my brother and I have never lived in the same state since high school while we're running this company. I've never lived in California with him. I move around the country with the Air Force. I come back here to Colorado to teach at the Air Force Academy and their business school. I go to the University of Colorado Boulder for grad school. And then I get stationed up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I live in Fort Collins for about 7 or 8 years while I'm commuting up to Cheyenne. So I spent about the last 10, 12 years of my Air Force career in Colorado up and down the Front Range. Lived in the Springs, Castle Rock, Boulder, Fort Collins, and back down to Littleton, Parker, all up and down the Front Range. And so Colorado became home. It's where my family, my friends, my business, where my life was. I love it here in Colorado. And so when I retired from the Air Force, I said, it's time to expand. I've been doing this, nights and weekends, doing what I can while still being active duty and traveling. It's time to go full time. It's time to expand the company. I could move to California, give it a go with my brother, but things have been working out pretty well for the last 8 years or so living in other states. Why mess up that mojo and move to California and maybe it doesn't go so well?
Sure.
I said, well, maybe we'll go into distribution. I'll work the national distribution market and we'll do that stuff. But then I'm traveling all the time. I got kids. I don't want to travel. I love being here. So we started researching the idea of, can we create a winery? Can we create a business here in Colorado? What's the model look like? What's the market look like here in Colorado for wine? And can we bring what we do in Sonoma, California to Denver, Colorado, and will that work? And that's how we decided to put down roots here.
And so tell them where you're located and when did you open?
Mm-hmm. We opened in December 14th of 2018. I retired from the Air Force December 1st of 2018. So 2 weeks after my retirement date, we opened up in the Dairy Block in Denver.
And so not everybody knows where that is.
Yeah. So the Dairy Block is in lower downtown Denver, right near Coors Field. It's a beautiful mixed-use development. It's not where I initially intended. We had looked in Lohi and Rhino and south of Denver, Golden Triangle area, all over Denver, trying to figure out where are we going to be. And I never thought that in the center of lower downtown, right next to a baseball stadium, would be where we would operate. And we had put offers on buildings to buy, to lease. We've been shopping for a year and a half, and we're just getting dejected. We weren't getting any properties. And my architect and designer was actually designing a space in the Dairy Block, and he called me and said, hey, have you ever thought about being in downtown Denver in a mixed-use development? Come check out this place, the Dairy Block. And I walked in there, and you walk into the alleyway. You walk into an alleyway in Denver, maybe walk the other way, right? Exactly. But you walk in the middle of the alleyway.
That alleyway is gorgeous.
And I walk into this vacant, completely barren space in a 100-year-old building in this development in downtown Denver, and I looked around and I said, this is home. This is where we want to be a part of.
And that's the thing about
instantly.
I've opened enough businesses. You just know when you walk in. It just feels right.
It's collaborative. It's mixed use. Everybody working together for a common goal there. It's artistic. It's creative. That was where we wanted to be.
And then just a few weeks ago, you opened the second location.
We opened up our second location. Just my nature, probably a year after we started being open, I'm like, okay, where's number 2? Where's number 3? Let's keep doing this. We really enjoy this model, and the people in Denver were really enjoying our model there in downtown. So we started looking. Of course, COVID hits. That kind of puts it on a slowdown for a couple years. We're all just in survival mode for almost 2 years. Can we be open? Can we sell online? Can we ship? Do I have to get another job? Like, is this even going to work? We'd been open for a little over a year before COVID hit. So we put the shopping on hold for a little while, and then we kept thinking, as we come out of COVID, let's start looking again. Do we want to be out in Palisade and actually buy some land and be more of a Colorado winery? Do I want to be down south, north? Where do I want to be? But having lived in Fort Collins for so many years, I knew the town. I loved it. It's a great market. And there's another mixed-use development up there called the Exchange, which is very similar to the Dairy Block. It's a little mini kind of version of the Dairy Block. It's a combination of brick and mortar and container park community, ice cream shops, distillery, brewery, restaurants, mini golf. I mean, there's all kinds of fun stuff in there. And there was a spot that somebody had vacated during COVID, and it was the one we'd wanted for a long time, and it just worked out perfect.
So if people go to your store, they can buy bottles, right? They can buy glasses, they could have tastings, and then food-wise?
Yep. The nice thing about being in these fun little mixed-use developments is that you can have a huge food menu and not have a kitchen. And that's our goal. We're wine people. We're not restaurant people.
You're serving from your kitchen just what, charcuterie?
We're just doing charcuterie and some light desserts out of our kitchen. But in the Dairy Block, you've got the Milk Market, which is a fantastic food hall. You've got Forage Restaurant.
Last I saw you were kind of doing a deal with Forage where they would deliver it. Is that still?
You can get plates of sushi, steak, salads. You can go with Milk Market pizza, chicken sandwiches, all delivered to our space by QR code right to the table. So it's like we have 10 restaurants that deliver to our space there in the Dairy Block. And in Exchange, the same thing. There's about 4, 5, 6 food vendors all around us. Go grab some tacos, grab chicken and waffles, go grab whatever, bring it up to our space, have a glass of wine with this huge array of food options.
Let's talk about the wine that you brought today. Tell them what this is.
Yep, so I brought in some of our Zinfandel from the Dry Creek Valley out in California. So as I mentioned, our main spot is out in Sonoma. Most of our production happens out in California. It's where our crush, fermentation, barrel aging, all that good stuff happens out in California. And then some of that wine comes out here to Colorado in bulk, and we finish it, age it, blend it, bottle it here in Colorado. Some of it stays out in California. But Zinfandel, I brought that today because Zin is the first grape we ever harvested, like I said, way back there in the 2009 harvest. We have almost always made Zinfandel as a company. We now have about 12 different wines in our portfolio, but Zin has always been a staple for us. It's one of our winemakers' favorite wines. It's one of my brother's favorite wines. And not everybody does it. Everybody does Cab, everybody does Chardonnay, but not everybody does the Zin, so that's what I brought today.
Wow,
So cheers.
Let's drink. Should I be spitting? No.
No need.
Hell no.
So,
we want a website?
yep. BlanchardFamilyWines.com is going to be our main website. You can get to all 3 locations from BlanchardFamilyWines.com.
Can they order on there?
They can. They
shipping?
can either order from the California location or the Colorado location, and we'll ship. Sometimes we have the same wines in both locations. Sometimes they're different. So if you do pop on there, if you see something you like in California, again, it might be different than what we have in Colorado, different blends, different varietals, different vintages. but we ship from both locations. Both locations have wine clubs, slightly different in style, but they're all transferable between the 3 locations. And we've had guests. We opened our Fort Collins location 2 weeks ago, and we've already had our first tri-location guest that has been to Denver, Fort Collins, and Healdsburg.
Wow.
So I love it when I can see people that go visit all our locations, and they like us enough in one that they want to go visit another.
Terrific. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for
you're
bringing me
welcome.
some wine.
Yeah.
Do we have a show tomorrow? Yes, we do. What do we have tomorrow? I don't even remember. Well, we'll be back tomorrow for What's for Lunch. Let's drink. Who is on tomorrow? Normally I don't know these things.